just kept on. Yeah. Did you watch that series on Netflix?
I have not. I've heard of it. It's good.
Oh my God, awesome.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I apologize for the delay. I want to welcome you to the March 16th, 2022 Yarmouth Planning Board meeting. I am Joanne Crowley, the Chair of the Planning Board. As this is a hybrid meeting involving both in-person and remote participants, I will read the following statement into the record. This is to formally advise that, as required by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, paragraphs 18 to 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on June 16, 2021. The Yarmouth Planning Board will hold a public meeting on Wednesday, March 16, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. in the hearing room, Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth, Mass. 02664. The public is welcome to attend. Remote access will be provided and the meeting agenda will be posted on the town website, www.yarmouth.ma.us under the Agendas and Minutes tab. I will begin by taking roll call. Brad Goodwin.
Present.
Liz Hartsgrove. Susan Britta.
Present.
Will Rubenstein. Chris Vincent.
Here.
Joanne Crowley here. Seeing that we have a quorum present, I will now call the meeting to order. For those of you who are joining us via remote participation during the public comment period for this public hearing, I will invite the audience to comment as well as those in the audience who are here in person. Online audience members can use the raise hand button to notify the chair. Dial-in audience members should press *9 on their phones. All audience members will be muted until you are recognized by me to participate. Once recognized, audience members are asked to identify themselves first and last name and their affiliation for the public record. I'd like to now ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would now like to open the public hearing, and the time is 5:45 for the zoning articles under consideration for the Town of Yarmouth 2022 Annual Town Meeting scheduled for April 26th. For those members of the public who have joined us this evening, many of you have already signed in. I appreciate that. For those of you who have not yet had that opportunity, I would ask you to please sign in for our public record. Following the protocol for public hearings, I would now like to read into the record the legal notice announcing this meeting that appeared in the Cape Cod Times on February 28th and March 7th. This will serve as a brief overview of the articles under consideration for us this evening. As published in the Cape Cod Times, public hearing notice, Yarmouth Planning Board. The Yarmouth Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, March 16th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. in the hearing room of the Yarmouth Town Offices, 1146 Route 28, South Yarmouth, Mass. 02664, and via remote access or via telephone to consider the following proposals to amend the Yarmouth zoning bylaw. Number 1, amend section 202.5, use regulation table to identify short-term rentals and add a new section 418 outlining various requirements, provisions, and definitions for short-term rentals, including a November 13th, 2024 sunset clause. Number 2, amend section 404.5, seasonal employee housing at motels, hotels, and amend section 500, definitions for seasonal employee housing at motels, hotels, to modify the provisions to expand the definition of temporary seasonal employees who can stay within the designated 15% of hotel motel rooms from just employees of the hotel motel owner to other Yarmouth businesses. Number 3, a citizen petitioned zoning article to amend the zoning map to rezone a parcel at 17 Berry Ave on assessor map, noted on assessor map 30.222 from R25 residential to B2 business, HMO D1 Hotel Motel Overlay District 1, and the ROAD Road Revitalization Overlay Architectural District. Copies of the complete proposed text for each amendment are available at the Planning Department. Some of you may have it tonight. I hope you do. And they will continue to be available here in the Planning Department. Any person wishing to be heard on these proposals to amend the zoning bylaw should appear at the time and place designated. Thank you for coming. Written comments have been received by Kathy Williams, our town planner. Any further written comments, we would ask that you send along to her as well. And with that, I would like to open the public meeting with the following protocols in place. So let's review how we're going to work through the meeting this evening. Each zoning amendment will be reviewed separately. For each article proposed by the planning board, a brief presentation will be given by Kathy Williams. The presentation on the citizen petition article will be given by Robert Ciavara. At the end of the presentation for each article, I will ask for and open the hearing for public comment. When giving public comment, please come to the microphone, either at the table or at the podium. State your name and address, and please direct all questions to me. I can accept any comments and questions directly, or invite other board members to answer, or invite members of staff to join as well. After public comment for those present, written comments that have been received already will be summarized by Kathy Williams, noting the name of the person who sent in the written comments. After the last article, I'll make a final request for any further comment. I would like to make one announcement that was not in the meeting minutes. We will not be voting this evening on these amendments. We've set up a special meeting for March 23rd so that we may have two valuable members of the planning board who are unable to be here tonight because of family conditions. They will be able to join us next week. And we feel that it's important that we have full participation and voting by all board members. And so we have set up a special meeting for next week for board consideration, where we will deliberate and we will vote on what we will be recommending to the Board of Selectmen. So let's begin. Kathy Williams has presentations on the first two articles. So I'll turn it over to Kathy at this point.
Certainly. I'm Kathy Williams, town planner. I just would reiterate that tonight we are having the public hearing tonight, so all public comment will be held tonight and the public hearing will be closed tonight. What's happening on the 23rd is the actual deliberation of that information by the planning board. No further written comments are really being received as part of this public process because we're having the hearing this evening. So the first thing is identifying the planning board. I think Joanne did a good job of introducing everyone. Joanne's the chair. Liz Hartsgrove, who couldn't be here this evening, is the vice chair, as well as Will Rubenstein, who's a clerk and couldn't be here. Then we have Brad, Chris, and Susan, and myself as support staff. So the first zoning article that the planning board's working on for the annual town meeting is related to short-term rentals. So the purpose really is to provide for an orderly operation of short-term rentals for residential properties that kind of balance all of the different interests from private, neighborhood, and public interests. So what are short-term rentals? They're basically when you're renting a room or an apartment or houses for 31 days or less at one time. And it excludes motels, hotels, bed and breakfasts, and lodging facilities. So if you're renting your house for more than 31 days, you're not considered a short-term rental, you're considered a seasonal rental. So that's really the defining difference between seasonal and short-term. This all came about through the acts of 2018, an act regarding and ensuring short-term rentals. And this is what established the short-term rental state registry, which you probably have heard about, the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund, and also that excise tax that can be administered by the state and locally. Yarmouth currently in 2021 had 889 short-term rentals in town. generating at 6% local short-term rental tax. We generated $1.34 million in fiscal year 21, and we have about 1.16 million already generated in fiscal year 2022. This short-term rental tax is an extremely important revenue stream for our wastewater initiative. I'm sure you've all heard about that as well. One of the things that has come up fairly recently in July of 2021 was a recent case of Styler versus the ZBA of Linfield, and it really brought into focus the question of whether a single-family home in a residential neighborhood could be rented out as a short-term rental, and specifically questioned how short-term rentals might be or may not be viewed in various people's zoning bylaws. So this gave the planning board a little bit of a pause to take a look at our zoning bylaw. And although our health department has the authority to regulate rental properties, and they do registry and inspections, they set occupancy loads based on sanitary code, they have annual fees, and they also have penalties, short-term rentals really are not regulated right now in our zoning bylaw. So they may have been in the past kind of viewed as a customary accessory use to a single family home, but things have really kind of changed as we've had the advent of these different online booking programs that have really a little bit changed the flavor. And we have received some complaints regarding noise and people parking in different locations and kind of overcrowding. So we really need to address the short-term rentals in our zoning bylaw to avoid having any problems this summer with short-term rentals, and be sure that we're preserving that short-term rental revenue tax for our wastewater initiative. So what are we proposing in our zoning bylaw? But before I get into the amendments, I think there's a little bit of an update I wanted to give you, is understanding that there's going to potentially be an increase in workload with all of these rental housing inspections. The Board of Selectmen did approve an additional housing inspector at their meeting last night in the budget for fiscal year 23. And this will help with doing the safety inspections, doing the enforcement, better tracking of the short-term rentals between the state registry and people who are registering locally, and kind of to be sure that we're getting all the revenues that we need here, or that deserve here in the town. And we also are working on updating our permitting software that will also better able us to track short-term rentals versus seasonal versus annual. That'll help us develop more of a comprehensive list of the registered short-term rentals here in the town of Yarmouth. So that was good news at the Board of Selectmen meeting last night. So what is our proposed bylaw amendments? We've identified some units that are not eligible, anything that has some type of affordability restriction on it already, an accessory apartment, because that's really meant for year-round rentals, not short-term, and any units that have any type of code violation, building, health, or fire code violations. We have a whole section regarding the registration and inspection, where we're referencing all of those health department requirements, and also posting of a 24-hour local contact. So there's somebody who could be contacted locally. We also included a significant number of kind of general provisions based on the concerns that we've heard from a variety of people with regard to short-term rentals. So we want to make sure that trash removal is properly addressed. So at the end of your occupancy, or at least once a week, we want to have the trash removed. Parking also seems to be another issue of concern. So on-site parking, you have to have it with a minimum of 1 space per bedroom. You can't park on the lawns, and no overnight street parking. We've heard a lot of concerns where people are just kind of overcrowding neighborhoods with a lot of street parking. And also no street parking at any time if it's going to impede traffic or safety. Duration, we have a minimum of 2 nights. So we don't want someone changing over too frequently. So we have a minimum of 2 nights. If you have pets, you just need to be sure that you're adhering to all the state and local requirements, and picking up after your dog and keeping your dog quiet and that type of thing. We wanted to be clear that short-term rentals on the properties, you can't have RVs and campers and sleeping tents, so it can become too much of a too many people sleeping there at one night. And then, of course, they need to meet all of the state and local regulations, building, health, fire, and water. Some additional provisions are kind of related to the type of rentals. We're really restricting this to residential uses only. So no large scale events such as weddings, corporate events, or big giant family reunions or class reunions. A lot of these short-term rentals, they are located in residential zoning districts, so they're not meant to be event venues. They're not allowed under our current zoning bylaw. So we're just kind of bringing that over into the short-term rentals as well. So nobody can be advertising their short-term rental as a, come have your giant wedding here. That has been known to cause problems in the past. But we did want to have a little flexibility in the language with regard to small gatherings. So we did add that you can have small gatherings that have no adverse effect on the neighborhood nor impact to any reasonable person's enjoyment of their property. So one of the things that we did include in the short-term rental is a sunset clause, and sunset clauses are not the norm in zoning bylaws, but one was added due to the expedited fashion with which we brought this short-term rental bylaw to the public, because we wanted to be sure that we were retaining those revenues this summer for the short-term rental tax, so that we have that money available for our wastewater. So that was really important. So the sunset clause really is meant to kind of help make people feel comfortable voting for it at annual town meeting, understanding that we're still going to take another little bit closer look at this. So right now, the sunset clause, it would expire, meaning the provisions of this bylaw would expire on November 13th, 2024, unless amended at a future town meeting. So if that date comes and goes and we don't do anything, then it goes away. But we can always come back sometime before that and make amendments. So basically, the planning board is also intending on having a stakeholder meeting this fall to talk about how did it work? How did the short-term rentals work this year? We'll talk to different stakeholders, different department staff, and kind of find out, well, do we need to make any amendments or provisions, and kind of get an idea how we might make any amendments in the future. And that's essentially.
That
That's it.
finishes the presentation for the first zoning amendment. I'd like to ask any members of the public here who have comments or questions for the board on this particular article. Yes, please.
Hi, Christine Greeley, 48 Glenwood Street. First of all, I want to commend you for beginning to deal with this. I think this is important. I have listened the last 2 years to several friends who live over in Barnstable with the nightmare that they have had with Airbnb rentals in their, next door to their houses, with very, very little response in terms of things changing for them, and how devastating it was to the residential neighborhood and their community, their life there. So I thank you for taking this on. Secondly, I want to commend you for the sunset clause and for the fact that you are going to do some follow-up and review about how this is going and how it's progressing. I think that's really, really important to do. I think third, one of the concerns that I have, and I'm glad to hear that you're going to be addressing this, is the whole issue, I think, in general about rentals in this community has been, when there are complaints and you have things going on in your neighborhood from properties that are clearly being rented, is there a prompt response to the complaint to you because of the quality of life that's being decimated? I've had traffic issues, things where literally ambulances couldn't get through around a corner, in the neighborhood because of the overparking that was going on at a rental property. And so I like the idea that there's going to be increased inspection, but I also would like to see that indeed it is very responsive, that it's a quick response, because in particular, if you're doing rentals or just of 2 days, when you've got a nightmare going on, you got to get in there and do it, more quickly. The one question I have, Liz, and sort of trying to understand it a little, that you're indicating that at 31 days, it's a seasonal rental. So what happens with somebody who's renting all summer in this process, a day or two at a time or anything? Do they not kick into seasonal rental, or how, what is the differentiation going to be, in terms of that? And will indeed the kinds of parking enforcement and the other kinds of enforcement issues that I see here that I think are so positive also, firmly in place for seasonal rental? How does the differentiation between a seasonal rental that's got people coming in on weekly or whatever versus somebody who's just doing a short-term rental? Thank you.
Kathy, you want to?
Well, I think a short-term rental could be someone who's renting from really the 2-day minimum up to 31 days, and that's a short-term rental. If you're over that, then you could be seasonal or annual renter, and you're kind of the same as anybody else who rents annually in the town of Yarmouth.
But on the homeowner, when they're going for the permitting, that you're going to be, having seasonal renting out of your house, will there be a differentiation in the application that they make as a seasonal rental or as a short-term rental? In other words, where does the line, it seems like it might be a little confusing as to which permit you were supposed to be going for and which form of enforcement will be taking place. Sorry.
That's a very good point, because right now the form really just says seasonal rental. It doesn't define short-term rental, which is the 31 and less, and someone who might be renting for the entire summer. So I think that's something that will need to be modified on the form, as well as the update of the permitting program that we're going to be doing. And Mark might have some additional information.
Madam Chair, the answer to that question is we've modified the online permit application. So there's 3 check boxes now: annual, seasonal, or short-term rental under 30 days. So they have to pick one before they can move on in the application.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is David Bernstein. I live at 2 Wisteria Road in West Yarmouth. I have one comment and one question, and I probably should know this, but when someone's a seasonal rental, more than 31 days, they rent all summer, June, July, August. Are they paying the same 6%?
No,
And that's a state,
it's a state, right. That's what that law that I referenced in the 2018 is if you're defined and you meet the short-term rental definition, then we get the 6%. So if somebody rents for 32 days, we do not get the tax.
so you get nothing. Okay, so my comment is, I am sure that there are many people in town who either don't know the seasonal rental law or rule or ignore it. And I'd like to see some more, I guess, lack of a better word, publicity to get out to people that if you are renting 31 days or fewer, you have this obligation. And if you don't, there are fines that could possibly be given to you. That can be done in our tax bills, certainly online, but something needs to be done. I just think there are many people in town who may be ignorant of the rules or may ignore the rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this from here? Kathy, help me with the chat. There are 11, how many?
There's 4, I think we'll need to have Ben. I think the chat, I don't know whether the chat are questions or whether they're just
Raised,
technical. I
okay.
think we've tried to keep chat to just technical.
You said there's no hands raised?
There's no hand. There's no hands
I
raised.
think there is.
Chris is going to double check, but I don't see any hands raised either. So if anyone who's online who's interested
Thank
in
you.
providing a comment, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you.
Yes.
I've come up with a question.
Sure.
I'm Barbara Fitzpatrick and I live on 70 Berry Avenue. There are homes in our neighborhood that are rented. And I wonder, how much responsibility does the realtor have? Because most of these homes are rented through some real estate company.
Yeah.
I think getting all that information out to the realtors is probably a good idea. On our town website, we have all the documentation of what's required, the general bylaw, the noise ordinance, as well as the application. And I think when we're done, hopefully if this gets approved, we'll include these regulations on the town website as well, so that people are aware of it.
What is their responsibility?
Their legal responsibility? I don't know. We have some realtors in the audience who might be able to answer that.
Yes, Mark.
Ultimately, it's the property owner's responsibility. I don't know who asked the question, but when I send a violation notice, I don't send it to a tenant. I don't send it to a realtor. I send it to the owner of the property, and they're the ones that have to deal with the issue. So it's never the realtor's issue. So when the fines have to be paid, it's the owner of the property. So they tend to deal with the problem pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any other comments or questions on this particular amendment? Yes.
I just have a
Could you
comment.
just state your name, please?
Sorry, my name is Susan Kinnear, and I have a couple of properties that I rent. And I've made the conscious decision that if I rent for less than 5 weeks, they have to go through my realtor. My realtor does pay all the taxes and then sends me the, whatever money, I get afterwards. So I don't know if it's, I mean, I thought, my understanding, it's the realtor's responsibility if they're taking the rental. And I'm not taking the rental personally.
Who's making the money on it?
Well, we both are.
Both are, right?
We
So-
both are.
But who owns it?
I own it,
So
It's in the contract.
but
you'd be the one
I,
responsible.
but I'm paying her
Mm.
to take care of the tax.
She has the contract.
It's an annual contract
It's
that
an
I have with
agreement
the
you
realtor.
have with the realtor to perform that service for you.
Yeah. And I would hope that all realtors in Yarmouth are doing the same thing. I mean,
It's,
I-
it should be clear that the tax doesn't, like the 6% local tax doesn't come directly to the town. All of the taxes go to the state and then the state gives us back the money.
Any other comments on this? Okay, I don't see any more raised hands. So Kathy,
I have written comments.
written comments summarized?
David Birdstein supplied written comments, but he's here and commented, so I don't know if he wanted me to summarize his or not, but there's an email from Kathy DiTrapano on Lewis Road in favor of any provision that will address neighborhood impacts. We also have an email from Angela Carboni from Wisteria Road in favor of the article, as we need to protect the residential character of our neighborhoods and ensure short-term rental owners pay the rental tax to support services and wastewater issues to maintain our water resources and beaches. Town should ensure taxes are paid and inspections undertaken. Glad to see sunset clause so the refinements can be made.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to the next amendment. Kathy has a presentation on this as well.
The next zoning article is related to seasonal employee housing at motels and hotels. And the real purpose is to try to expand the housing opportunities for temporary seasonal workers. We are a tourism economy and we really do rely on these seasonal workers. And we have an anticipated shortage of housing for seasonal employees, well, actually of seasonal employees for the 2022 season of about 150 people. Pre-COVID, we had about 400 J1 and H2B visa workers, and we do rely on them. There's also stiff competition for limited seasonal housing opportunities. And if we have a lack of workers, I think we kind of saw it last year, it really does impact business hours. Some businesses weren't able to stay open as much as they wanted to. It could impact the level of service that's provided to people, as well as ultimately the revenues that come to the town, like through restaurant and meals taxes. So in developing this amendment, the planning board worked closely with the Chamber of Commerce and their subcommittee, the Yarmouth Community Partnership, to try and identify how we might be able to address some of these issues with short-term seasonal workers. So what do we have in our current bylaw? Our current bylaw right now allows for 15% of motel rooms to be used to house temporary seasonal employees of the motel owner or the tenant of the motel owner. These are it's temporary basis. It's limited to April 1st through October 31st. The occupancy of each room is set by the health department. Only the seasonal employees are allowed to stay in the room, so no family members or non-employees are allowed. There needs to be a designated on-site proctor with rules and code of behavior. There also needs to be access to cooking facilities for the seasonal workers. The buildings and the property must meet all building, health, and fire codes, and it requires an annual permit that is issued by the building commissioner, assuming that they can meet all of these requirements. So what is the proposed bylaw? We're going to be maintaining all of the previous requirements noted in the current bylaw. The thing that would be expanded is the pool of seasonal employees who can stay within the designated 15% of hotel motel rooms, to not just be the employees of the hotel motel, but also to expand it to employees of other Yarmouth businesses. So the employees must be employed in Yarmouth for more than 24 hours a week and they need to denote the places of employment with contact information. They must also be 18 years or older. This is really anticipated to be where a local business might contract with an interested local motel or hotel and kind of develop some type of housing and employment package to attract people to work for them. So we're really looking at this as being more of a business-to-business enterprise. And of course, not all hotels and motels are going to be interested in this provision. There are also many built-in oversights, including the annual permit that was mentioned by the building department requiring that on-site proctor. You're also going to have self-policing by the motel and hotel owners who don't want paying guests to be impacted by seasonal employees. And there's also a motivation by the seasonal employees to behave so that they don't lose their housing and their employment and maybe even get kicked out of the country if they're a visa worker. Any zoning violations, so if you're not meeting all of those requirements that are outlined in the bylaw, they would be subject to enforcement and fines through the building department, and they could potentially be denied their annual permit in the future. In developing this bylaw, we worked very closely with the police and health departments who were consulted heavily during this. Some people had written in comments and had inquired with regard to why a sunset clause was not enacted in this particular amendment. As mentioned before, the sunset clauses really aren't the norm. The one for the short-term rental was done as there was really a financial component that we didn't want to risk losing for this summer. And so we wanted to be sure that we had something that would make people comfortable voting for that amendment. Amendments in the zoning bylaws can be made by the planning board or through petition at any town meeting. There are many examples where the bylaw has been tweaked over the years based on issues or concerns or problems that have been identified. So we don't want to be sunset clausing every amendment that we make in perpetuity. It would just be very untenable if we're always waiting to see how things go. We do have the ability to amend any zoning through a town meeting. And again, the planning board plans on continuing to monitor this issue with that fall stakeholder summit with police, fire, health, and the building departments, kind of identified who used the provision. Was it successful? What were some of the issues that were identified? What kind of amendments might we need to make in order to make this more successful? That's about it.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Any comments from the public with regard to this particular amendment? Yes, sir.
Again, David Bernstein, 2 Wisteria Road, and some of my questions, Kathy, you answered. I did write a letter, but I wasn't sure I was going to make it here, so I'd rather do this publicly. I do have I understand what you're saying about the sunset clause, but I do urge that a sunset clause be put in because I think this is a little bit of actually could potentially a big change. You did answer my question about who does the hotel owner will do the self-policing and noise level. Do we know how many hotel rooms there are in Yarmouth in between, let's say 28 and the major ones down?
I think total we have about 3,500 motel rooms in
Okay.
town. We have a lot.
Yeah. And you answered my question that says in the past, hotel owners set aside 15% of the room. Some people haven't used it, I assume. Okay. My other issue has to do with, I always worry about noise and things like that. So that's one of my major issues is who oversees that. When the person works for the hotel, that's an easy solution. But what happens if, for example, somebody's working for another company and they get let go? Is there a system, I assume, that will get in touch with the hotel owner and say, this person's no longer working, he shouldn't be staying with you? I'm curious what other towns are doing. I don't know if you have the answer to that, and you don't have to answer that now. And a change of the zoning for that. I did have something else, and I just lost what it is. But it'll come back to me when I go sit down. So, thank you.
I
Thank
can
you,
answer
Mr.
some of
Mercer.
those if you'd like. I really think the business-to-business connection is going to be what's monitoring that, because if I hired someone and I'm making this agreement to have my employees stay in your motel, if they're not working for me anymore, I'm not going to pay that anymore. And you're going to find that out right away, and that person's not going to have it. What are other towns doing? I know that in Dennis, the Pelham House was able to purchase a motel nearby, and they have a fairly lenient definition of lodging house, and they use that in order to be able to turn basically the motel into housing for their seasonal employees. It's one business who owns the motel, so it's for their employees. In some other communities, I do know that there are some like dormitories in Provincetown. And I do know through a variance in Harwich, they were able to do something similar with a motel for a business. So no one's come up with an ideal solution, I think, to this.
And how do we
problem.
define working in Yarmouth? So if I am a landscaper and most of my, even though I'm in Yarmouth and much of my work is done outside of town, am I still an employee of Yarmouth or vice versa? If I'm working, I'm a Barnstable person, but I have many people of my are in Yarmouth. What defines someone who works in Yarmouth? Certainly if I work at the inflatable place, I'm working in Yarmouth, but I don't know if that's been discussed.
It basically states employed within the borders of Yarmouth for more than 24 hours per week.
Yeah, but what does that mean? I could be working for a landscaper and working who's a Yarmouth landscaper, but maybe most of my hours are done outside of
You'd have
town.
to be employed and working in Yarmouth for 24 hours.
So they have to be physically in Yarmouth.
Yeah. I mean, we can clarify that if there's some concern about
Brings up
that.
a good point, because if you're a dishwasher, you are working at a restaurant that's in Yarmouth, which is one thing. And in David's example, there's a landscaping business that employs a lot of employees, and perhaps I'm sure they're working in Yarmouth, but they may well be working outside of town also.
Okay.
Good
I
point.
don't think I need to- Thank you.
Any other, yes,
Vita Morris, 74 Shaker House Road, Yarmouth Port. I would just like to second Mr. Bernstein's motion to insert the sunset clause in this particular article.
thank you. Yes,
I love a good microphone. Christine Greeley, 48 Glenwood Street. I also have real concerns about, given that this is a movement forward on things, I would like to see a sunset review process of indeed how this works. Because I guess I have a question, how many rooms have been used by seasonal employees in Yarmouth in the past in our motels and hotels? Do you have any clue about that?
I don't know if Mark might know. I do know that the Town and Country, I can't remember how many rooms are in that building, 24?
No more than a dozen hotels have taken advantage of this over the years since we've implemented the current standard. So I don't want to guess, but roughly around 100 rooms possibly throughout the town
In 1 year?
in a year. Yeah,
What was that number, Mark?
100.
right around 100.
Out of 3,500.
Right.
Right, well, 15% is about 550, so that's too low.
Yeah, because then the question becomes, if you're saying that we have 3,500 motel rooms in town and you're talking about 15%, are we talking that we're running up over 500 rooms in the town, that this is what this is going to be used with? I mean,
Well,
so I have
Chris,
a real question about the
it's
basis of
15%.
some of the rooms.
I've worked with the Hampton Inn for well over 12 years. They've never taken advantage of that. So that's off. I'm sure the old Cape Point, the new hotel there is not taking advantage of it. The Bayside, I go down a list. There's probably only a handful of hotels that are going to take advantage of this. So are you correct? Could it be upwards over 500 rooms? Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a chance I can get a modeling job? Yeah, but I doubt it. So.
Oh, come on now. Your tie is spectacular.
Thank you. But I think we're only talking about a handful of properties.
Okay, well then, but then the question becomes, does that particular property then become an entire, just employee rental property? I mean, so I think that's, again, calls into question the idea of putting the sunset clause.
I'm
into
sorry to
place.
interrupt you, Christine. Only 15% of those rooms can. So the whole hotel cannot be used for
Okay.
seasonal employee housing.
Okay. Yeah, but I do think that putting the sunset clause in then becomes, even more interesting. And I do think, actually, Mr. Bernstein raised an interesting question, because I wondered about that too. So I am in Osterville and I have my landscaping company and I'm sending some employees into Yarmouth for a number of property work that, am I now considered to be a Barnstable business or a Yarmouth business in terms of this. So the whole issue of employed in Yarmouth and the whole issue of is the company, are you indeed assisting a Yarmouth company, helping our own commerce and our own people here with their trying to fill jobs in the restaurants and various things here to help get their employee housing, or are we indeed helping other communities would be my concern on that one. I think that you've answered a number of my questions, but I again state, I really think the sunset clause and taking a look at this and exactly seeing how it's going, indeed are the employers and these motels and able to control, what's happening with people who are living there regarding it as their housing versus people who are coming in to visit the Cape, spend some money and time, at shops and restaurants in our community and having a good experience while they're here. So I think those are two very distinct populations. And I would like to make sure that that's really going well, along with the percentage of numbers and things that are going on. So I truly would like to also see a sunset clause in here. Thank you for answering my questions.
Any other comments? Yes, Jamie?
Good evening, members of the board. Jamie Vieira, the Vice President and Chief of Staff of the Davenport Companies, 20 North Main Street. I'm also the chairman of the Yarmouth Community Partnership that worked with the town in collaboration of putting this bylaw together. Our committee recognized that seasonal workforce housing has some headwinds. First is availability of workers. COVID caused problems with J1s and H-2B visa unavailability. And restaurants and other businesses suffered by not being able to staff. The second headwind is wage inflation. And third is housing. The only thing that we can address here is the latter, is housing. And so what we tried to come up with was a way of saying the town has present infrastructure and it has a present bylaw that allows 15% to be utilized for employees. And to really synthesize this down, we said, are we going to elevate form over substance by saying, does it really matter where the employee works for purpose of utilizing that room? That is, if the person works at the hotel, are they in any way, shape, or form different than the person that may work for a restaurant or may work for a retail store? The idea is to have options available for businesses to meet the demands of their customers by having employees. So to suggest there's a big change afoot here, I respectfully disagree. Secondly, we have built in tremendous oversight beyond what is already there, and we worked collaboratively with the chief to get his comments to put them into the terms that you have before you here this evening. What are other towns doing? They are doing far bigger things than we are even proposing here with dormitory style housing and using 100% of a hotel for employee housing. This won't lead to that proliferation because there's enough oversight, annual review, and 15% 15%, it's not 100%. Lastly, the sunset clause. As the planner pointed out, this new vogue thing is not the norm. And I look at it in this fashion. If something doesn't work, you review it, you bring it back, and you either amend it or you repeal it. But if something works, why does the applicant have to get it approved twice? It just doesn't seem to make sense, and that doesn't seem to be fair. So I think as written, we would urge you to move it forward to town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muir. Any other comments with regard to this particular amendment? I don't see any raised hands. Kathy?
I don't see any raised hands, and I'm assuming the chat's all, unless Ben tells us otherwise, it's
And
all
so-
related to.
Okay. You can summarize the written comments if you would, Kathy?
Yes.
please.
Received an email from Kathy DiTrapano. She's not in favor of this article, inquired as to how employees housed at motels, hotels will be monitored. Is it available to any person working in any town? Are Yarmouth business owners supporting this article? Is this an identified problem? And why no sunset clause? Felt it was a dangerous precedent to set as we are still fine tuning Yarmouth's long-term plan and have the wastewater project coming up. An email from Kathy Campbell from Wimbledon Drive, not in favor of this article, noting that issues with housing summer help is not new and believe the private companies should work to provide their own housing for their own workers. Did get the email from David, and he spoke to his comments. An email from Angela Carboni from Wisteria Road does not support the article, noting that there should be a sunset clause on this process in order to evaluate how well or how poorly it works. How will the town determine that those renting do indeed work in Yarmouth? And what about employees who work a few hours here and many others in various other communities? It seems like Yarmouth is generally asked to pick up the slack for working people in more affluent communities. This article should include fees from the motel hotel for the inspections that will need to ensure that people who rent have the facilities mentioned in the article. Another comment from Joan Carr, no address given. Make sure any changes in zoning for the proposed seasonal employees are deemed to be only temporary for the hotel owners to see how this works before we have any unintended consequences to deal with during these changing times. And that's it.
Okay,
Right.
thank you for summarizing. Yes,
I'm sorry, can you clarify if you have a sunset clause in the article? And that has a very specific date and at which point it would be reviewed, right? But in the meantime, can you amend or, bring this question up without waiting for that date, which is in November 24?
That's for the short-term rental one, but yes, the town could come and amend it prior to that date. That would be the intent, I think, is to amend it to either solidify it and take out that sunset clause and or modify and amend depending on the issues that are identified.
It's not necessary to wait. Okay, thank you.
yes.
Good evening, all. My name is Tom McAnello from the very historic village of Bass River in this very ancient town of Yarmouth. And I'd like to thank you all first for committing your time and your passion and your love for this community. It has a lot to be said about our volunteers. We have great volunteers in our community. And by the way, we're looking for more if anybody needs some.
Something to do.
And our staff. We have some great staff here at Town Hall, which could probably use some more, actually. I know the building department could use some more. A lot of activity. We have almost 1,000 permits right now going on in town. We have a lot of construction, a lot of people, but I think everybody knows that. What I wanted to ask tonight is the current bylaw now in existence. When was it submitted and how long has it been in place?
It's been since I've been here, so I want to say 2016. And it originally started out as requiring a special permit, but what was happening is that everyone was meeting all of the provisions, so it ended up getting changed to just be an annual permit issued by the building commissioner.
So for 6 years, we've been having this bylaw. We've had no problems, and we have a small percentage of applicants using this bylaw, and they probably don't even go to 15%. So being a business owner like myself, I know last year I was tired. And the reason I was tired is because I had to do a lot of work because I couldn't get help because they couldn't live here. And I had to close early. So I couldn't accommodate wonderful people like you who volunteer for this town who wanted coffee or something. I had to close. Why? I was paying good. I can't get people to come here. I can't get people to live here. It's too expensive. This is just a medium that's already been in place for over 5 years now with no headaches. This is a little tweak that doesn't say, it's a big change, it's minute. And I think it should be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Next article is one that is a petitioned article, and I'd like Kathy to just briefly give a little bit of background on this, since any of you who may have joined us for our meetings in the fall know that we've discussed this already once. So Kathy, if you would.
So the planning board did look at rezoning this particular parcel back in the fall from residential to commercial. What happened is after public comment at the public hearing, similar to this evening, the planning board decided to remove that parcel from the article. So it was never brought forth to special town meeting and voted on. I know some people were concerned about being able to bring back an article that had been voted down within 2 years, but this was never brought to town meeting. So that 2-year stipulation does not apply. And I just want to be sure people understand this. This was brought forth as what's called a citizen's petition, which for a special town meeting only requires the signatures of 10 registered voters in order to bring it forth. The planning board is obligated to hold this public hearing and hear public comment on all zoning amendments, including petitioned articles. As Joanne mentioned, representatives of the petitioner are here, and they're going to be presenting this article and answering any question. At the end, the planning board would vote to recommend or not recommend, or maybe even to defer or not have an opinion. It's up to you guys, but typically they vote to recommend or not recommend. Regardless of that recommendation, it's still going to be on the annual town meeting warrant. Their decision will not decide that because it was done through a petitioned article. The planning board is going to be presenting their recommendations. They're going to be deliberating on the recommendations on Wednesday, the 23rd at 5:30, and then they're going to be going to the Board of Selectmen with their recommendations on their Board of Selectmen meeting on the 29th. And then ultimately it will go to annual town meeting, which was the evening of April 26th at Matakey's. I'm not sure whether it's 7 o'clock still, or hopefully they'll have it a little bit earlier, but keep state, is it 6? Did they move it to 6? They have, but the warrant said 7, so hopefully it will be moved forward. So that's just, I wanted to give a brief background history for people who may not understand the ins and outs of petitioned articles.
Yeah. So Robert Civara, would you like to come up and talk to us about 17 Berry Avenue?
Thank you. My name is Robert Civara. I own Cape Cod Commercial Real Estate. I also live at 23 New Hampshire Ave, and I'm a full-time resident. First thing I'd like to say is, yes, I do believe this is fixing a long old mistake. It's pretty evident by the fact that neither lot has ever been built on. This is a great corner, CVS, Town of Yarmouth, gas station, and the 99. This is a major intersection for Yarmouth. And it is a wasted potential commercial tax generator. Right now, it's earning about $300 a year in taxes. This would bring in more like $25,000 a year in taxes. I have read letters and oppositions that I'd like to address some of what I've read. Nearly all of what I've heard many times before, and are all self-serving without any concern for the other 23,000 residents. Some are just grossly misinformed. I'll give you an example. Empty storm fronts as a reason to not approve. The reason why we have empty storm fronts in Yarmouth is because the cost of construction would make it so that you'd have to rent at double what people are charging for rent now. The cost of construction being $200 to $250 a foot would cost you about $13 a foot for a bank. You can rent in Yarmouth for $12. So to build in Yarmouth, you need someone to pay upwards of $28 per foot based on the cost of new construction at 80% occupancy. That's not 100%, it's 80% occupancy. So, and the town doesn't offer that much in appeal, drive-by appeal or sewer system. So for us to get our rents up is going to take a lot. Second example, turkeys. I don't think turkeys living on a site is a valid reason to reject change either. It would set a dangerous precedent considering the turkey population in Yarmouth. Traffic in the neighborhood. I really don't see how this has any residential traffic impact. There isn't any reason why anybody would dive down the side streets to get to a corner lot business. You wouldn't drive down. You can't get from Thomas to Berry. And have them talk to you, please. They're making comments in the background. It's
Yeah,
uncomfortable.
please, I'd like to just remind everyone that we should have the same decorum that we would want if we were speaking. So Robert, continue.
I understand that the concern really is about 28, and I live off of Berry. I deal with 28 daily. The difference is I also realize that Yarmouth is not the only person working on 28. Dennis and Hyannis regularly allow businesses that affect our traffic. You ban one property, that's okay. You could ban 12 businesses from opening in Yarmouth and it would not affect the traffic pattern. Is this good for the entire town? Without new and existing users tying into the sewer system, it would not be financially sustainable. We need about $8 million in user fees annually to support the interest alone on our $160 million project. We as a town have embraced the need for housing. There's no difference between that. If commercial real estate needs help in order to develop, if we do, then the rents can increase and construction will become financially attractive again. This is exactly what the town is starting to do, and smart owners are meeting with people to discuss how the paving, the sidewalks, the back pass, the lighting, and all those things will be affecting their businesses. This type of business growth is needed to get the town to get away from paying 90% of every bill out of the residential dollar. More specifically about these lots. The 3 other corners of the intersection are all deeper or as deep if approved. The changed lot will not even be as deep as the 99. The 99 also is a 2-lot deep intersection corner. This would simply square off the corner again, which probably should have been done originally. Again, rezoning will help the undersized commercial lot make an unattractive residential lot viable for development. It is fixing a very obvious mistake. I believe this is exactly the mission of the town regarding Route 28 and will benefit the entire town. Trying to put this in perspective, the town is 16,000 acres. This is 1 acre abutting commercial property presently. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Viara. Yes.
Can I ask one question?
Sure. Robert, we have a question?
I through the chair to you, sir. Just on property rights, do you have anything saying that you represent the owner?
I've provided it.
Okay, could
Right,
you read
Kathy?
it? You want to read that now, please?
I spoke to the property owner's son of 17 Berry Avenue last fall, and they were in support of rezoning this property.
In the abutter in the front
And-
too has also submitted.
You're talking about 11 Berry Avenue?
Yes.
Yeah.
They've already supported in acceptance of
They-
this.
Thank you,
change.
sir.
They sent something
They
to
both
CEDC.
requested it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I'd like to open it now up to comments. Yes, sir.
My name is John DeLiso. I live on Bay Road. I've lived in Yarmouth first as a summer resident in the last 10, 12 years since I retired year-round. I know and understand this town about as well as anybody alive. And I look at this situation with the kind of classic, if it's not broke, don't fix it. There is little doubt that this is a potentially valuable commercial lot, but there is also little doubt that the people who are the abutters, both immediate abutters, 2 blocks back, 5 blocks back, bought into the community because it is what it is. And for the town to take the position that they're going to change the zoning on a given lot to aid one specific property for development, in my mind, is about as unfair as it gets to all the other potential affected parties. There has to be something more to life than just finding a way to make another buck. So, thank you.
Appreciate that. Another comment?
I'm closest to it.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Peter Freeman. I'm an attorney, Freeman Law Group in Yarmouthport, and I'm a land use attorney, and I teach land use at Boston University School of Law. I'm an adjunct professor of law, and I'm here representing my legal assistant, Nancy McPhee, and I mention that because I've known her for a very long time. She's a dear friend of the family's for 30 years, and that means that I know the property involved. That is her house at 25 Berry Ave behind the lot in question. It is the lot directly behind the red square. That is 25 Berry Ave, owned by Nancy McPhee, where she has resided for, I think, more than 30 years, a long time. So number one, I do echo the statement that was just made by another resident. I basically have 2 or 3 categories of objection. I do think it's a misguided attempt. Yes, citizens have the right to file a petition. No question about that. However, and I respect the broker, I work with brokers. As I say, I do a lot of land development work. In fact, I've written many zoning amendments for clients in towns, so it's a process, and having this process is indeed appropriate, and we appreciate the opportunity. I think the most important legal argument that you have to be cognizant of, this is just about as classic spot zoning as I can think of. I could well use it perhaps as an example in my law school class. It is spot zoning for multiple reasons. For many years, Yarmouth has studied through planning and revitalization efforts, and they've come up with zoning amendments sponsored by or promoted by the planning department and the planning board, such as all of the hotel, motel overlay districts and things like that. The only time that I know of, and I don't know from my direct knowledge, but from what I have been told, there was an attempt in 2006, and it was defeated at town meeting. Since then, I don't know that there's been any systematic, organized, planning-based analysis of this lot and any proposal to include it for the purpose of expanding business use. So spot zoning intended for the benefit of one individual only. To me, it's classic. And again, the fact that it is a citizen position doesn't automatically mean that it's spot zoning. Otherwise, there'd be no right to have it as a citizen petition. But the fact that, in addition, in the planning board's wisdom after the hearings in the fall, you didn't think it was worthy to go forward. So repeated attempts to try to rezone this parcel, to me, smack completely of what is spot zoning. It's not part of a coordinated effort. So that's the first category. Secondly, although really related, I'm not sure I agree with most of the points stated by, I forget his name, but the proponent, the speaker on behalf of the proponent. The only thing I think I agree with is about the turkeys. I don't ask you to consider turkeys. But, the tax base and all of that, that alone isn't enough of a reason. Expectations, I think, are the opposite of what he said. The owners for years have known it's not business owned. To talk about a corner, it's not a corner lot. So it doesn't create a coordinated corner. To talk about traffic, we don't know how much it would create. But as someone who also does a lot of housing, there's no question that traffic statistics through the Institute of Transportation Engineers, retail or office or commercial, whatever it is, create a lot more traffic than does housing. And of course, it's own residential, single family right now. And if you look at the plan up on the screen, we don't know where the access would be. It may well be that for compliance with the zoning, I'm not sure, because it's not in the zone at this point. There could well be access on Berry Avenue. I'm not sure why he said access would clearly be from 28. Theoretically, the lot between the 17 Berry Ave and 28 could be combined. Maybe that's what the broker is intending and the owners are intending. But there's no guarantee that there would be no access from or onto Berry Ave. So again, that's in the first category. The second category is, even if you believe that it's not spot zoning, you still have to have a rational basis for if you were weighing the detriments and the benefits. There's not really all that great a benefit to the town or to the area to add one small lot. It's an acre, but it's not a large area. It's not going to really allow an opportunity to create a better business design or to house or be the location of any type of business use that's a perceived need that's been discussed and proposed in the town. And I think the fact that there are vacant properties, commercial properties, does speak to the fact that it's not really needed. Likewise, I'm not sure what the point was about construction, because, construction costs are even more. So if you can't sustain rents for the properties that are already existing, I don't know how you can sustain, rents that could be high enough to sustain the very high construction cost. But frankly, I don't think that's really directly relevant to you. But that, to me, is just kind of a factor that I don't think weighs in favor of supporting the proposal. So weighing the benefits and the detriments, I'm sure that the neighbors will speak again. But I've been to this property many times, as I said, with my friend and my client, Nancy. It's a very peaceful, quiet, residential house, as is the rest of the neighborhood. And it's intended under the zoning to be buffered by the residential zone that starts, in this case, next to her house, so that you don't get business. To do this would be really creeping zoning incrementally without much analysis and forethought at the request of one owner. And in terms of purpose and intent, the residential character of the area certainly would be compromised, and the detriments are logical. By the way, I did send in a letter. I think it was emailed on Monday, so I'm not going to read all of my letter, but you can summarize it further if you feel like it, but I'm more or less summarizing it as well. So, perhaps increased traffic, noise, certainly, lights from cars and from the building itself. There's all kinds of aspects of construction, although that's a limited period of time. But there's just a lot of negative impacts for very little benefit. So that's my second category, which is the benefits and the detriments that you really should weigh. The final category is a bit more speculative on my part. But although there was a representative, and I don't question his right to represent the owner, that's fine with me. But the petition, first of all, it may be legally sufficient, but I think it's so poorly identified that when you have citizens who, by the way, if I'm not mistaken, the people who signed it, I don't recognize the addresses of anybody being in the neighborhood. So I'm not quite sure why these citizens have an interest. They have a right to sign as registered voters. I know that. I know the process has been followed and the signatures have been certified. So I'm not challenging that. But number one, I would point out that these folks, number one, I don't think they're here. I don't think the petitioners are here, which is a bit unusual if it's so important to them. Okay, that's fine. But, the other thing is, for those who signed it, the only identification of where it was map 30, parcel 222. And I doubt very much that people had an idea as to really where it was. It would have been better, even if not legally required, to note the location, 17 Berry Avenue, West Yarmouth. So that's the third category. I just think that, although it may not be legally defective, that it weakens the strength of the petition and the fact that citizens have signed it. So overall, I think it's really a situation where, as you've done before, as the town repeatedly has looked at this, 2006 in the fall, and once again through a citizen petition. So that just makes me think it's not appropriate to do it now. And I know that it still has to go to town meeting, but we would respectfully urge you to do what you did in the fall and vote to disapprove this or to not recommend it, since, again, it has to go to town meeting. So certainly the wording of your vote in a week would be vote not to recommend, and that's what we urge you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes?
My name is Meg McNamara. I live on Massachusetts Avenue, and I reject the thought that by turning over one parcel of land to a commercial spot in order to accommodate a business is helping the tax base. It's what's hurting the tax base is all of the abandoned buildings and the buildings that aren't being constructed. And I understand that construction's expensive, but the value of that neighborhood to the people who live there and the quality of life is every bit as important as that one commercial piece of land. If I was around when the 99 was voted in, I would have rejected that too. My family has been a part of this town for well over 100 years, and I hate to see yet another piece of West Yarmouth become commercial. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes. Mr. Saban.
Good evening, Jim Saban, Yarmouth Port. I'm not an abutter. I don't live in this neighborhood. Actually, I probably live about as far away from this property as you can and still be in the town of Yarmouth, considering I live on the Dennis line. I'm here to speak in opposition to this petition article. One of the concerns that the petitioner had indicated that there'd be an increase in tax revenue, but there's no consideration for the fact that the lots that are R25s that abut this their values most likely will be diminished because now you have an external influence of a commercial property on those residential properties. So yeah, maybe we might get more income on the commercial side, but we're probably going to lose it on the residential side as well. So that's kind of a moot argument as far as I'm concerned. Just as a little bit of background, I once sat in the planning board. I was on the planning board with Brad when the 99 was brought forward.
Oh, really?
Yes, I'm that old, Kathy. Brad was only 10 at the time.
And modeling.
People that know me know that I'm have been and will continue to be an advocate for economic development in this town. As a matter of fact, when I was a selectman, I'm the one who created the Community and Economic Development Committee for this community. I've spoken opposition to when the Cavalier was converted to housing. I spoke in opposition to the fact that we should eliminate the retail in that property. So I get it. I'm an advocate for economic development, but not at the expense of individuals' personal peace and quiet and quality of life. If you look at the abutters to this property, they will be the ones that are affected. I won't be, except for when I drive down the street to go to my boat. But I think this is spot zoning that doesn't need to happen. If there's such a high cost for construction, then it's not going to be developed anyway because you can't afford to build it. That's what I just heard. And by the way, it's $350 to $450 a foot these days, not $250. So I don't understand the purpose of this except for an individual lining their pockets to be able to make this property a commercial property. And I would ask you to not recommend this article. And I intend to speak in opposition to it as well at town meeting. And I think I've taken enough of your time, but I think you get my point. Thank you very much and have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Yes.
Vita Morris. Mr. Freeman may be interested to know that a lot of the names on that petition are so-called Uber citizens of town. Doesn't matter.
I'd appreciate if you just,
No, I wanted to.
I understand you can, my point is, this is a hearing.
Okay.
There's some certain protocols. You can address the board, please.
All right, so in relationship to what everybody else said, I have a sort of housekeeping type of comment and some questions, I guess. I see that, this same article was, I guess we could more or less infer, was rejected by this board for the full special town meeting. And so now Mr. Zavara is going on the petitioned article route. Is it fair to assume that until the town meeting, let's just say that the article stays in the warrant, okay?
It will stay in the warrant.
Okay, and let's just say that, it's acted upon and even favorably. Doesn't Mr. Zavara have to wait until that happens before he starts marketing the property? He already has a sign for it as being marketed as a commercial property. I
would presume those are risks that brokers take every day.
Buyers beware.
I'm sorry?
I would say buyers beware.
No, but I mean,
Not being facetious, I'm just saying if somebody wants
what I'm
to
driving
buy
at
it, he can.
is what does that say about Mr. Zavara?
Well,
And this isn't the first time that he's seemed to have stepped outside the rules. Well, he had a little problem a while ago.
This is a hearing. This is a hearing with regard to that particular zoning article, not Mr. Zavara. This is not a hearing about him. So let's keep our comments to the rezoning of 17 Berry Ave. If you have some comment about that, please state it.
I don't understand how this is not germane.
It's not. This is a public hearing with regard to zoning amendments.
And it's perfectly all right for him to
This
be
is a
marketing
public
it
hearing.
already as a
This is a
commercial
public
property.
hearing with regard to zoning
Has
amendments.
assumed that the rezoning has occurred already, hasn't he? By doing what he's doing?
Do you have any comments with regard to this particular article? Thank you. Yes.
Tom Sullivan, 14 Bunting Lane, West Yarmouth. I also live right next to it, but I do travel it. And I've been in town here a long time. I think Brad might have been not even born when I first started coming here.
I
And
got
I
a
think
bullseye
Jim-
on my back tonight, baby.
And I think Jim himself might have been an infant. My questions in regards to this lot. I have some other questions involved with this. Now, just to follow it up, the petitioner mentioned the taxes have gone down. I looked up the assessment on the lot. 2 years ago, the lot was assessed $150,000. Presently, it's down to $141,000. In this day and age, I can't understand how property assessments are going down when every one of us know they're going through the roof. All right, so that's something I think it has to be addressed. You mentioned about the curb cut. I don't think you get a curb cut on Route 28 right now. That's, I think, a problem because you're going to have a hearing before the state on that. So logically, the curb cut would probably end up on Berry Ave. My other question, I have several questions here. My question is, what is this property going to be used for? If the petition would like to come forth with it, does he have an idea what might be in mind if he combined the two lots?
Robert, do you have any, would you like to address that?
Yeah, I got a couple things I'd like to put of information.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, it's a question I was just asking. I'm professional. Yeah,
You
go ahead.
done?
My question is,
What we're planning on doing with it.
what you're planning on doing on combining the two lots?
Yeah, this happened very organically. What happened was the first lot was contacted I was contacted to find out who the owner was, and I did. It turns out that it was Starbucks that was interested in the corner lot. They put an application in. They couldn't get their self-approved on the first lot. I knew the people of the second lot also had it marketing, so I contacted them. They did show a couple other plans that showed a couple encroachments upon the other lot. It occurred to both people talking that if we did put these things together, it would be more viable for construction. You're right, there's a lot of difficulties in developing those corners, and that's why they have not been developed. And that's why one single acre lot on a great corner has sat there for 4 generations with the same people paying taxes every single year without anybody trying to develop it. The second point of information I'd like to make was, again, greatly misinformed, almost to the point of ignorance. The property is not being marketed commercially. Hear that? Property is not being marketed commercially. It's being marketed residential with the notice that it says it's on the agenda for April 26th. Both owners have agreed to work together. I appreciate Jim's legal expertise, but I can tell you you should not be surprised to hear that I'd have a lawyer ready to say that he does not agree that this is spot zoning. I hope that doesn't surprise you, but he's a representative lawyer of the person that's on the corner lot says it's not spot zoning. I'm sorry?
I didn't say that.
If we can,
Just address it to
I'd
the
like,
board.
I'd like to have you address the board.
I was a lawyer. I'm sure Jim would not like to be called a lawyer.
Thank you, Peter.
And what I'm hearing mostly is an exact example of NIMBYs. Only the abutters are really coming out saying noise, view, and that's the same argument anytime there's a development done anywhere. And that's why it's in the best interest of the town to collect the extra funds, to see a corner that sat there for generations after generation, do something. And again, I will be back probably sometime in the future. If it takes 2 years, it takes 2. If it takes 5, maybe after we start paying $160 million in sewer and nobody's paying into it, that the town will say, yeah, we need to do some more aggressive type of changes in order to get this stuff paid for. But
Thank
most
you.
importantly,
Thank
I
you,
want to say that was ignorant and miscommunicated.
To the board, to the board.
Excuse me, excuse me,
Can I finish?
excuse me. Excuse me. I would like to have,
Thank you.
You were at the, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have the floor. I'm not yielding. As they do in Congress. I do have.
But I would like just to mention, this hearing is to provide us with all the best information that any of you have to offer us. If you have repeat arguments that we have already heard once and twice and 3 times, we're not deaf. Okay, so that's my point. So I'd like to hear some new ideas, new comments, new areas of concern. If you don't have any, please refrain from asking to speak.
I
Continue.
have more areas of concern. As brought up by a distinguished attorney over here, he brought up the petition article, which I have here, with the signatures on it. Okay, one, I know the petitioner is on the Finance Committee, and that causes, I think, maybe a problem. I don't know if the Finance Committee has made a recommendation on this.
If I can.
Wait a minute, let me finish. Can I finish? All right. On the
No, you
sig-
can't.
on the
Actually, no, you
signatures-
can't.
On the
Let's
signatures.
address.
The
Sir,
signatures.
Sir, please, I'd like to address that because we've already addressed that.
No, we
That is
haven't. Ma'am,
isn't it?
the town moderator signed this.
Sir.
We have a town meeting problem coming up.
It has nothing to do
That
with
has nothing
zoning.
to do with this zoning amendment.
Well,
I am asking you, that's a bureaucratic, legal issue that town council has
Okay.
already addressed.
I looked at the site of the petitioner. It is advertised for $575,000 as a commercial property. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone new like to say something? Yes. Peter, I'd like to recognize someone who hasn't spoken yet.
Barbara Fitzpatrick, 70 Berry Avenue. When I bought my home, there was not a gas station on the corner. There was not a 99 restaurant. And I thought I was buying a home on a nice residential street. I am and always have been a full-time resident. I'm not here seasonally. And I just don't like the idea that that's going to be one more thing that's going to be a detriment to the value of our properties. And I think that the town has spent money on different little areas that were non-buildable lots that were underwater or what have you, and made nice little parks out of it. Why can't the town do something about the corner lot and make some kind of a little park out of it?
Thank you. Yes. Yes, sir. Yep.
Joe Gudritis, 65 Berry Avenue. I was here for the September meeting, so I won't get into any repeat issues. I want to bring something new and basically a comment that was invoked by the first speaker. I'd like to suggest that if those lots are vacant, it's not, if the lots are vacant, to me, the corner lot is vacant either because the owner does not want to develop it, or his price to the public is too high. No one wants to buy it. It's in a revitalization roads district, which was created to account for lots like that, to ease their problems, to encourage development. So that lot is already accounted for. So if it's not being sold, it's not a problem with the lot. It's a problem with our zoning overlay description and rules. The lot that's in question, 17 Berry Avenue, yeah, it's vacant. If it's vacant, once again, it's vacant because the owner does not want to develop it. The owner is asking too high a price. No one wants to buy it. Or it abuts business property and people don't want to buy a lot that's abutting business property. It's not our responsibility to develop 17 Berry Ave, change our zoning so that it can be built. If they want that lot built, reduce their price, sell it, someone will build a house. If the reason that's not being sold is because it's abutting a business property and we convert this under special town meeting, you've passed that same problem on to the new abutters that had a buffer. So I don't think his first comments stating that they're undeveloped and we need to develop them. They're undeveloped for a reason, price, or they didn't want to be developed, or our zoning rules need to be changed under the roads overlay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Christine.
I feel like we all need to give our credentials. I've been a seasonal resident for 41 years and a full-time resident for 16, and have watched a great deal that's gone on in this community. One of the things that bothers me most was to hear tonight the word NIMBY used. And I'm very sorry, but I happen to believe that the people who live and are directly affected by any action that's taking place are the people who we most should listen to. They are the people who are living minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, there, and understand very fully what is going on and what needs to take place. And so when the term derogatively is used to be a NIMBY, I actually have to say I see them as some of our strongest residents in this town, because they are the people who are willing to speak up and talk about the kinds of things that should be of value in this community, and that they are in value to those people. Secondly, I do think that there are some significant issues in terms of the development of what's going on Route 28 in general. I think when you drive down 28 right now, the number of properties that are either boarded up, appear to have been sold, are vacant, and that have been on the market for quite some time now, that have much better potential for development, have not taken place. And it talks a lot about either the cost of construction that's been talked about already, the cost of the properties, the cost of trying to create a business environment right now in the kind of inflation in the world we're living in is a problem. I do think that the idea that taking those wooded areas that are actually pretty attractive at this point and trying to deal with the curb cut issue, the danger of that whole area and that traffic light and the turns and the things that need to take place between Berry Avenue and Route 28 at that section, because we have both emergency vehicles coming down from Higgins Crowell through there. We have a lot of things going on, people going to beaches and other things. And I do think that this is a significant issue. And the idea of putting something like a Starbucks with a drive-through window or something in there is another absolutely horrendous idea. I think the idea that planning boards and individuals in the past have taken serious look at these properties and have come to the conclusion that they shouldn't be developed is something that you also, I guess you're part of the NIMBY now, because you've taken a harder and better look at this. And I think the idea of bringing it into a petitioned article, which we know are usually appear at the end of town meeting when half the population is left of the small number who are turning up for town meeting anyway, is an absolute disaster for us, and particularly on something that goes with, and I'm sorry, it has been mentioned before, this is spot rezoning. Thank you.
Joe, you get some people online too.
Okay. We're going to take some comments from those who are with us remotely.
There's Jean Mickle.
Are there any?
Yes, there are two hands up.
Yes. Ben, do you want to let Jean speak? I'm sorry. Is that what? I'm not sure if you can see it. That's why I sat over here so I could see the screen better.
Hello, Jean? Can you hear us?
There we go.
Thank you very much. I can hear you now. I am a resident of 18 Thomas Path, and we have owned that home for 52 years. And I just wanted to let Robert know that 17 Berry Path had a home on it at one point in time, and it was demolished. So for him to say that there was nothing on that property is incorrect. And I also wanted to just make the fact known that if this is truly going to be a Starbucks, there is enough issues coming down 28, whereas there is lines on 28 trying to get into Dunkin' Donuts, and it will happen again on a Starbucks because of the number of people who are, sorry, coffee junkies. I don't do coffee, but what else? The other thing that I am very concerned about is if I do end up having a commercial property right behind my home, my rentability of my home during the summer that I do pay taxes for, I make sure those are done first, is going to diminish my income because people aren't going to want something as noisy as a Starbucks behind us. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jean. We have
Judith Warren.
She's in. She's got to unmute, but she's in.
Yeah. Can you see her name, Kathy?
So
Is it
Ben, can you allow Judith Warren to speak?
He's trying. He's trying.
Can you tell her to try to accept the invite to the panel?
Can she accept the invite to the panel? Judith, if you can hear me?
Judith, you need to accept the invite to come to be a panelist in order to be able to speak.
Where's the accept icon?
It's on her computer.
It's on her screen.
On her screen.
Ben, can you just unmute her as an attendee and allow her just to speak? She won't be able to show her face, but she could
Oh,
speak.
well, here we go.
She needs to unmute.
Yeah, Judith, can you hear us?
Just unmute.
Judith, you need to unmute.
Lower left-hand corner.
Judith, if you can hear us, you need to unmute yourself so that we can hear you.
It's over the lower
We
left.
can't hear you right now.
I think she's away from her computer.
Okay.
Maybe we'll try her back
Okay.
again.
We'll try her again. Okay, those were the only two, right?
Correct.
Okay. Back to the floor, Ms. Morris.
Yes, I just want to read a quote that I saw on Realtor's website this afternoon. And it reads, quote, 1.03 acres of commercial land offered at $575,000. And I will not be called ignorant by somebody like him.
Yes, please.
I'd just like to make a comment of Joyce Cullen, West Road.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Joyce Cullen on West Road. Our family has owned the property since 1952. And I remember we called that the haunted house on that property for many years. But this is just a common sense question. If we're looking as a town to sewerage and all of the things that are going to be happening, we really, we're not sure of a lot of things. I would think it would behoove the town to leave it as is until all the planning, the property owning on either side, whatever needs to be done. Just seems like common sense to me to let it be.
Thank you. Question?
I have a question about the meeting for next week, Barbara Fitzpatrick, 70 Berry Avenue. Now, do we have to return here next Wednesday? Are you going to make a recommendation or is that already a done deal?
No, the plan is, we will have this public hearing tonight that we will close. We have to technically close the public hearing. And then we will all, the members who are not here this evening will watch this video. They're required to watch the video so they hear everything that was said. Kathy will summarize your comments and provide them to us. We will relook at all of the written comments we've already received, and we will deliberate and discuss next week on the 23rd. And at that meeting, we will vote to recommend, not recommend, or amend a particular one to two or the two zoning articles for us, we can amend. The petition article, as it is stated, would stay the same.
Does anybody know what the state rule is as far as curb cuts on 28 that would be so close to the intersection?
I could
Sure,
give a little
Kathy.
bit. Yeah. Mass DOT would be required to issue a highway access permit. And they typically don't like to issue them where there's stacking lanes. So people are stacking to take the left-hand turn. Whether they would be willing to issue something where you could take a right turn in only, sometimes they'll limit the turning movement that can be done. But in order to get all the turning movements, it would seem that you would need something on Berry Avenue.
I know that this was a problem back, I mentioned this before, that I led the petition against the 99 only because I didn't want the curb cut on Berry Avenue. And that was an issue at that time. That and I had over 200 signatures. And of course, the 99 is still there. But the problem was the curb cut. So I have a feeling that the only way the state is going to allow a curb cut, it's going to be on Berry Ave. And we are going to be the initial people that are going to have to feel it. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify one point I did make. You please come next week if you'd like to. It's a public meeting. We just won't have a public hearing.
But will a vote be made at that time?
That's correct.
So we'd know who it was that was
That's correct.
abstaining or who was going to vote for it.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
My name's Steve Collins. I live at 71 Berry Ave, and I'm a relative newbie compared to most of you. I've been here since 2013, so it's only been like 9 years. One of the things I witness all the time is the traffic on that street. If there's another curb cut with the Starbucks coming out on this street, I'm going to continue to do what I do now, and that's drive through the neighborhood to avoid that light, because sometimes you can't even get out on that street. So you got to drive down Silverleaf and go up some of those other streets and hit some other lights to get away from there. It's very heavily traveled, and I recommend against it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We do have a couple of more online that I'd like to invite in as panelists. Can you see who they are, Kath?
Well, it's Judith Warren and Judy Warren.
They're the same.
Well,
Are they the same?
They're the same.
they must be the same person. Judy?
Two computers?
Yeah. There's Judy.
Judy, you need to unmute yourself.
Again.
There we are. There we are. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
We were here the whole time. We were working off of two machines and focusing on the wrong one. That's what happened.
We're so sorry. We usually call our millennials when we have technical problems with computers. So.
Well, thank you all. It's been very, very interesting. And we would like to share with you our concerns about rezoning this particular lot. One of the concerns we believe has not been mentioned thus far in the hearing is the question of what would happen when the next lot owner decides that he or she would like to have their property rezoned for commercial purposes, and then the next and the next. On what, if there's insufficient legal basis to zero in on this one lot and change the zoning, then when the next lot owner applies, on what legal basis will you be able to say no if you wish to say no? So I think that is the crux of the encroaching commercialism as an issue, and we'd like to share that concern with you. I also want to, I know it was said by just a moment ago by Chris Greeley, but the term NIMBY was used to apply to all of us who are concerned. And yes, we are neighbors, and yes, this is our backyard. And I want to say that I'm proud of the neighbors who took the time to learn about the issue and to attend the meeting and to join you by Zoom. If the local neighbors of any neighborhood are not actively working to protect their own neighborhood, then that would be the problem that we should be concerned about. So I think NIMBY is not an insult. It is a badge of honor to be worn by the most informed and active town citizens. Thank you. Go ahead, Arthur.
I just want to let you know, my family's 5th generation town of Yarmouth. On the Cape, I graduated from Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School. I used to walk through 17 Berry Avenue. There was a path where we would get on the bus on Route 28. We live 7/10 of a mile from the site of the 17 Berry Avenue petition. And I just want to make a statement as a lawyer who's practiced for 41 years. I believe the planning board will, and the town of Yarmouth will buy legal action after legal action if the board approves this particular attempt of using a citizen's petition to circumvent the Yarmouth governance, which I do not believe there is the legal right under the facts that I've read them to grant the rezoning of this particular property. You're buying yourself a lawsuit here, many. And I just want to point out, I played baseball in the field behind the 99. The corner is an absolute disaster from a traffic standpoint. There are people trying to turn into the gas station. They're trying to turn into the 99. We used to be able to walk to the block, the end of the block to 28 over to CVS. It's a dangerous intersection as it is, all because the 99 encroached on a residential neighborhood. Please, as a board, do not approve, vote against this circumventing of what I believe the town of Yarmouth can't do on its own as a zoning board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Your name, sir?
It's Arthur Warren.
Arthur Warren. I'm married to Judy.
I knew you were married to Judy, but I didn't know your name.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Oh, we live at Two Shore Road, by the way.
Okay.
Just down the street.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments from the public who's here? Yeah, please.
Joe Goodright, 65 Berry Ave. I too thought this was a spot zoning issue, and I'm not a lawyer, but I wondered, did town council review this and recommend that this would not be a problem? Or have you heard from town council before this even makes it to the
The only
special town
thing,
meeting?
the only issue that would happen is if sometimes when someone writes a petitioned article, especially for zoning, it's wrong in form. And so the town clerk would say to town council, can I certify this? It doesn't make any sense. The town clerk has certified this and it will go on now. And then when we're done, if it gets approved, it would need to go to the Attorney General's office and get approved. And that might be where the Attorney General might say, wait a minute, you have an issue with spot zoning here. But typically petitioned articles aren't reviewed by our town council.
But before this was even a petitioned article, it was an article.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if town councils advised you and said this smells of spot zoning.
It never made I'm sorry to interrupt, but it never made the warrant. So it never made it
So
that far.
They wouldn't even.
They didn't look at it
they
because
wouldn't
it
even
never,
recommend to
it wasn't going to
all of
town
us to
meeting.
waste our time. They'll wait till it gets, okay. Thank you very much.
Yep. Yes, Mr. Nicanello.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tom Nicanello from the very historic village of Bassover in this very ancient town of Yarmouth. Well, we just had a visioning process done, I gather. And Madam Chair, if you can just a quick synopsis of what the end result was of that visioning statement. What did our residents vision we wanted to do in the future? Work,
Anything.
The list is long. It would take quite a long
Work.
time.
Work, play.
Oh,
Well,
What was the four? I'm sorry.
Live, work, play.
live, work.
work, play, learn.
Live, work, play, learn. So that was a visioning result from our residents, which I'm sure everyone here in the room filled out because I'm sure they want to participate in our community, right? So in order to work, live, play, and learn, Number one, you need to stay off the road, right? There's a lot of traffic. And just think in a couple of weeks, how much traffic you're gonna have. Okay, so with that point, because Yarmouth is divided by a highway, we have no town center. But we have three great, ancient, very unique villages, don't we? We have the village of Bass River, where I'm from. Some people like to call it South Yarmouth, but my electric bill still says Bass River. We have a village of West Yarmouth, which really doesn't have a center. It's kind of like, it needs a little work. And then we have, no, doesn't need work?
Say the library and the church?
Exactly. Exactly.
If we can, Mr. Nicanello, if we can.
Let me continue.
And
So over in
again,
Yarmouthport, we have another center, which is one of
we
our
want to
first
focus
centers.
on 17 Berry Ave.
Correct.
What new comment
Thank
do you,
you.
what new comment do you have with regard
So-
to 17 Berry Ave?
We're all intelligent, mature adults, and we understand what we want in our community. We just heard it. Live, work, play, and learn. West Yarmouth is a wonderful community, wonderful village. And as this gentleman just said, that corner, that area is the center of West Yarmouth. So if we want to leave it the way it is and not work on that corner, so we can all not drive in a car for 10 weeks, but we can walk up from our house to that corner and enjoy all the fruits of everyone's labor and then go back to our resident and not drive, wouldn't that be wonderful? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. And with that, Kathy, do you have any closing comments?
There's some written
The
comments.
Written comments, yes, with
Um,
regard to this.
I think a lot of them have been stated already, so I'll try to summarize very quickly. Jean Mickle did, and Lori Whitcomb did submit written comments, but she spoke already. We received an email from Chris Adams from 14 Thomas Path. The one thing that's kind of, I'm just trying to hit what's new. The question, the applicability of comments made last fall about the residential abutters to the 99 originally opposed but now enjoy it, thought the houses were built after the restaurant, so buyers knew they were buying next to a parking lot when they bought their residential property. He also submitted his comments from last time having to do with no one in the neighborhood was in favor of the rezoning. It's dominated by single-family homes. Lots of commercial in the area that already that could be utilized. There's sufficient commercial land elsewhere. Commercial property would not be welcoming to vacationers, negative impact on season rentals, concerns with traffic, and losing our Cape appeal, increased noise with removal of trees, wildlife, lower property values, lower vacation rentals. Land should be sold for residential, single-family house. Received an email from Bud and Carol McGinnis from 26 Thomas Path, who were opposed to the rezoning. Zoned residential for years, concerns about someone wanting to line their pockets for profit at the expense of others. A hotel or motel would not fit here. Property values would most likely decrease for both seasonal and year-round homeowners. Focus should be placed on unoccupied commercial properties. Petition include no abutter signatures, and let the voices of those opposed be heard and keep West Yarmouth a town and not a city. We got comments from Attorney Freeman that he spoke to. We also received email from Kathy DiTrapano from Lewis Road. She's not in favor of the article. Need to wait for any zoning status changes until we have a plan for Route 28 in conjunction with the wastewater and our visioning moving forward. Email from Carol Campbell from Wimbledon Drive, opposed to the zoning changes as the town should take into consideration the objections of tax-paying neighbors and the effect on their neighborhood. Also, there are plenty of blighted properties along Route 28 for commercial development. An email from Judith and Beverly Parker from 22 Thomas Path, opposed to the rezoning. Many existing pieces of property in the area already zoned commercial, concerned about impacts to wildlife, noise from tree removal, lighting, traffic, quality of life. It's unfair to the residents that purchased their homes in this area, knowing that the property at 17 Berry Avenue was zoned residential. We did receive a comment from David Bernstein, who is opposed to rezoning of the article of the lot as well. An email from Marcy and Joan Gauntlet, who are opposed to the zoning. There are many existing parcels in the area, again, already rezoned, concerned about wildlife, noise, quality of life, and being unfair to residents. And the last one is from Angela Carboni from Wisteria Road. Planning board should not support this rezoning, which allows business zone to creep into an essentially residential area, being pushed by those who stand to profit, and is not in the best interest of the town. There are many closed businesses along Route 28 with redevelopment of the business corridor preferable to encroaching into residential areas. And she supports the neighbors who bought their properties under the current zoning and are opposed to the change.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. I appreciate your comments tonight. And again, we will be deliberating and voting at our voting on recommendations next week. And with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Need to take a roll call. Susan? Britta?
Aye.
Chris Vincent?
Aye.
Just Brad Goodwin.
Aye.
I wanted to catch your eye. Sorry. And so the public hearing is now officially closed. Again, thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.
We will move on to other items on our agenda. We have in our packet a draft note with regard to the notice of project change on the comprehensive wastewater management plan that would be sent to MEPA, the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act Office.
Excuse us. If you could take the conversations outside, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
No, we got more stuff to talk about. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Environmental protection. Okay.
So any comments for Kathy with regard to this particular memo we want to send along? Okay, so good to go, Kathy, on the MEPA memo. Next up, our meeting minutes.
Motion to accept minutes of February 16th.
Second.
Okay. Let's get my on here. I'm sorry. Again, we'll take a roll call on that. Brad Goodwin?
Aye.
Susan Britta?
Aye.
Chris Vincent?
Aye.
Joanne Crowley? Aye. Next up, Kathy, you've sent us some decisions, of the Zoning Board of Appeals and other decisions that we can see. Any committee updates from board members? I have one. I attended the RAC meeting, the Water Resources Advisory Committee, on February 28th, at which we discussed this notice of project change and the update with the consultants, CDM Smith. And that was the primary purpose of the meeting. We also reviewed the town meeting articles that are setting up these the financial stacking for our wastewater project. We're moving a bit of money around, creating new categories, proposing some home rule changes that need to go to the state legislature. So those were reviewed as well. So those were the primary updates for the Water Resources Advisory Committee. There was one comment made about the stated mission of the committee, and it relates to our freshwater ponds and our water supply, and the notices that we've received in the mail with regard to levels of contaminants that have exceeded some standards, and whether or not this the committee needs to consider expanding its mission in terms of addressing and paying attention to those kinds of issues as well, beyond wastewater, which has been the primary focus of the committee for a while. So that is on our agenda to discuss over the next several meetings. with concern to our local ponds and freshwater access and estuaries, as well as our drinking water. So that's the update from RAC. Anyone else? Okay. Any board member items? Okay. Kathy, correspondence or staff, how are we doing on that?
The only thing I wanted to mention is that the Cape Cod Commission, in conjunction with the town of Barnstable and Yarmouth, is studying the Route 28 corridor between Yarmouth Road in Barnstable, where the CAM is now or was, basically to East Main Street, which is that strange East Main Street, Ionoff Road, Route 28, just barely in the town of Yarmouth. And so there's going to be a public input session to overview the study area and then to get a better understanding of the issues and opportunities in this area. So it's really related to that intersection, which I think there's some people, and I'm going to send out some notices to you, Susan, and to the different Hyannis Park Civic Association, because I know that they have a lot of impacts from the hospital in that particular intersection. But they're having a virtual public input meeting Wednesday, March 23rd at 6 p.m. And the links to get that information is available on the town website under news items, and it just went up this evening. So another meeting.
Thank you.
The same time.
Which, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just realized, yeah, I was going to go to that, but I'm not going to now.
Upcoming meetings, obviously, we now have one for next week, and thank you all for being flexible with that.
Is that 5:30 or 5?
I think 5:30.
5:30?
Just to be consistent so people.
Okay.
All right.
And then the Board of Selectmen meeting will be on the 29th. So as a product and an outcome of our meeting next week, Kathy puts together 2 notes that go to the Board of Selectmen, if I have that correct.
It's actually a draft of it was
Both of them
included,
are in.
but I'll try and expand upon that and incorporate the public hearing comments.
Yeah.
So it'll be a more detailed memo.
And at the meeting next week, we'll determine who will be the sponsor of the individual articles. So we'll talk about that. And then April 6th and April 20th. Okay, and with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Brad Goodwin,
Aye.
Susan Britta. Aye. Chris Vincent.
Aye.
Joanne Crowley. Aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Would it be worthwhile? Would it be worthwhile to ask?